My name's Sasha Barab. I'm a professor of learning sciences at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. And I guess I'm here to share our experiences in getting kids engaged with new media literacies. What does it mean to bring these new kinds of new media to schools? And what are the opportunities and challenges in doing so? I am also principal investigator of the Quest Atlantis project, and we are worldwide now. We are a multi-user 3D virtual environment that works to position academic content in ways that are interesting and engaging to kids. So rather than lecturing a kid about erosion or water quality or pH levels, we immerse them in a game where they're running around trying to figure out why fish are dying, and the other non-player characters that we design in the game treat them with admiration and hope, and saying that we're really glad you're here, and we don't know why fish are dying, and we need you to help figure out why. So it's a very different kind of positioning, where instead of treating these kids when they come in as people who are ignorant, and our job in education is to get them smart enough to demonstrate some sort of high score on a test, our goal is to position them as really empowered kids who get to feel what is it like to try on the role of a scientist, and to see themselves as people who could possibly have that future, but where we couldn't do that in the real world for a 10-year-old. In a game, we can create a storyline in which they are the hero, and that the hero is a scientist or a doctor or a reporter or an accountant, and they get a chance to see why the stuff they're learning in school could matter. When we look at how kids are being positioned to engage, to tinker with, to explore, to represent themselves, to pursue their passions with these new media technology tools, and then we look at how disciplinary content of school is being positioned, we have a real disconnect, and we wonder why when kids leave school, they run home, jump in these new media where they have agency, they have consequentiality, they have people taking up what they're doing, they have a legitimate role for using these. And so one of the things that media has become is no longer a place for me just simply to sit back on the couch and watch someone else's stories. When we look at these videos that you're all producing of these kids, we see, they're there to make comic books about things that they care about. They're there to make videos and movies about things that they're passionate about. And then they'll learn the tools and what does it mean to be literate, and develop representations that other people will take up because they're advancing their own agendas. And what's exciting about this world is ultimately what determines whether something is valuable is how the next community takes it up, not because a teacher has given me an F or an A. Teachers have been really enthusiastic about different ways of meeting standards. So one of the things we thought was, well, first of all, we thought that meeting standards was going to totally corrupt anything cool that we could do. And what we found is that the standards are usually set out in a way that they were well-intentioned when they were designed. There's nothing wrong with a kid being able to demonstrate that they can, write a persuasive essay. It's a wonderful skill to have. The problem is that the spaces in which they're that are available to the teacher and to the kids in the schools are very uninteresting for kids and very limiting. And so what we can do is we can take a space in which we put the kid in the middle of a modern version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, in which they're having to decide, should the doctor be allowed to continue doing his medical research in order to come up with a cure for a plague in the town. And all of a sudden kids are very excited to learn about persuasive writing because they see their role is to convince the people in the town to allow him to continue or not. And then we can do things like add game metrics where if a kid grabs a quote that says this, he should be allowed to continue his research because research on one creation is more important than, or less important than, saving the town of 10,000 people. And so all of a sudden, persuasive writing becomes a tool in these spaces for transforming them, and that's really hard to do in the context of a classroom. So we found that kids are very excited to kind of use what they're learning in schools to solve useful things, and their energy gets teachers very excited as well. I think print-based literacy and textbooks as they were traditionally framed were really powerful for a long time, and actually being able to get all that information into a classroom, especially when not a lot of people knew, and it was really hard to help someone understand the idea of erosion or metaphor or distance rate time, having that all in a textbook that I could bring in and have as a resource as a teacher, and having these other people who spent a lot of time thinking deeply about disciplinary content was really powerful for a long period. But we're at a different time. We're at a point where it's not so much about getting information, and it's about using information to accomplish particular ends. And so one of the things that's really exciting to me about games is when I start a game, I'm immediately positioned with a purpose. And my purpose is usually to help transform some situation that's in a problematic state. And what that requires me to do is to go understand what are the rules of this world, what are the laws that affect it, when I do this, what happens? And when we think about, when I play Trauma Center, for example, and I'm a doctor, and in a moment I'm actually experimenting with surgery and trying to feel what it likes to be a doctor. In a game, I'm considered someone who has a really powerful role to do something significant with my time. And that significance requires that I learn a bunch of things so that I can do that thing even better. And what's really exciting is when you have kids spending lots of time trying to transform a game situation, whether it's get my little Pokemon character to level up by beating these other Pokemon, or whether it's doing surgery in a successful way, or whether it's to save a town by gathering up resources and hooking in the well and getting the oils appropriate, accessing the finances. And what's really exciting is when I do that, at the end, I get to feel like I accomplished something. I am told by everyone, thank you for what you did or didn't do. And you have kids logging online trying to look at how could I do that better. And failure is motivating. It's not something to be avoided. I'm allowed to tinker. I'm allowed to try being something I couldn't normally be. And if we limit kids in schools to being just ignorant children, vessels to be filled with things, we're not creating futures for them at all. One of the problems for teachers that they're facing is that the type of tools that they're being given to equip kids to participate in kind of these evolving new literacies are not the kinds of tools that they need or that kids are going to be using outside of schools. So as long as we continue to equip teachers with textbooks as the primary resources for their lessons, and we don't give them, we don't make available tools like Jalen has, these social networking tools that he's using in his classrooms, where the computers are being made available and software is being created specifically to give those teachers new tools to help kids engage in new kinds of literacy. We're kind of setting the teachers up for failure. We're giving them old kinds of tools, and then we're giving them expectations and outcomes that their kids are going to be held accountable to that don't engage those kids the way that we see the fire in Cameron's belly, for example. So I think that teachers are in a really hard space. And what teachers need to start doing is advocating for themselves, advocating to parents that there is, in addition to the print-based literacies, other kinds of literacy that we need to be educating our kids in. And if we don't get parents on board, if we don't get administrators on boards to appreciating that this new media literacy is what's going to be determining these kids' future, not their ability to, remember historical facts or to recite the definition of erosion on a test, but actually start getting kids to integrate literacy or different disciplinary understandings to solve meaningful problems. Getting information, memorizing facts, it's no longer a part of our current process. I can grab my iPhone, and within 5 seconds I can get you more than you remember probably in your entire high school career, of whether it's English, social studies, whatever content it is. So I think teachers need to become advocates for their own selves and for what kids are doing outside of schools. As long as teachers stay out of the game, we're going to have a real problem in our hands, and we're going to really miss an opportunity to transform schools. And we're going to see dropout rates like we see in Chicago, where you have up to 50% dropout rates, which is just unfathomable in this country. It's just totally unreasonable. And there has to be a point when we say, you know what, it's not all those kids that's the problem. It's the way that we're thinking about school. It's the way that we're using textbooks. It's the resources that we're giving kids. And then ultimately, it's the kinds of things that we're allowing kids to do. And as long as they don't care about those kinds of things, then we're going to lose more kids in our educational system. So I'd really like to see teachers start to appreciate the power of what game has to offer, and then work with parents, administrators, and local companies to start to use that to develop resources that they can use to prepare their kids for the 21st century.
For more information on what works in public education, go to edutopia.org.